Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Machine Talks. I am MeanMachineDean, and today we are back with another podcast. And today I have a fantastic guest. Kind of gaming, kind of movie, kind of related. It will all explain itself. Anyway, Faisal from the Silver Sabres Combat Academy has decided to lend me a small portion of his time so that I can do a great interview with him. So without further ado, it's time to start the podcast. Here we have Faisal from the Silver Sabres Combat Academy. Please make yourself aware and please introduce yourself, sir.
Hello, welcome to the MeanMachineDean podcast.
Wow, look at that! Look at he's doing my job for me. I quite like this. This is good. Well done. I haven't paid him, honestly. I haven't paid you, have I?
Well, you know.
We'll talk about that.
I'm not 16-bit enough for you.
No, yeah. Good answer. I like that. I like this start. This is good. Right, before we get started, I've got a little bit of sort of housekeeping to do. So the gentleman, let me get my fingers right. The gentleman there is Faisal. And every so often there will be links posted into chat, which will be to everything related to Silver Sabres. So if you do want to check anything else out, please make sure you go and follow all of those links and give them a big thumbs up and like and smash all the bell things and all that stuff. Also, just above my head there is a hashtag, which is hashtag MeanMachineTalks. So if you do want to tweet live whilst we're talking, please make sure you do that on Twitter. And besides that, it's time to start. So, Faisal, it's great to have you here. Thank you very much for giving me your time. Really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, no, thanks for inviting us, mate.
No problems at all.
Thanks for inviting us.
So you know, what I'd like to do with my guests normally is sort of get them to do like a 30-second kind of introduction to who you are and kind of, you know, what you do. So I will now pass the floor over to you.
Ooh, 30 seconds.
30
wow.
30 seconds or a minute. Let's not be specific.
I'm me, you're you, he's him.
Yeah.
My name's Faisal. I am one of the co-directors and one of the head instructors for the Silver Sabres Combat Academy. And we teach traditional sword arts, but we use LED sabres, which are kind of terrestrial props for imitating the fictional weapon of the lightsaber. You know, we teach, and we teach. Trust me, there are better ways to earn money. We teach because we love it. We teach because it gives us a chance to share some of the processes that have allowed us to survive to this point, and give people the tools to manage stress, basically, and to assess conflict and problem solve, really, and the best way to attune your mind to the task of solving problems in the moment is martial arts combat.
That's I mean, that's quite interesting. That, I mean, I guess from someone looking on the outside in, if they first sort of see your demonstration area, and they do go around to a variety of different exhibitions and Comic-Cons and stuff like that. When you look from afar, you just go, oh, okay, it's people waving lightsabers, that's really cool. But it's only until you stand there for probably more than 30 seconds, you really start to actually understand exactly what's going on. Because, you know, there's probably been people who do demonstrations, but the thing is you're combining martial arts with combat as well, and I think that's probably the thing that kind of got me first interested in seeing the actual demonstrations that you guys do.
Well, I mean, you don't have to travel far to, you know, I mean, you can buy a lightsaber prop from the Disney store for 30 quid. It's not much effort to buy 10 of them and set yourself up as a as a Jedi Academy or some sort. And you know, you'll note that we don't actually use any of the Star Wars terms in any of our marketing or anything like that. It's not part of our syllabus, because really we want people to have fun. We want them to use their imagination and to interpret what they're doing in any way they want. But really what it is as fast as possible, we need them to recognize that they're studying a traditional art. And this is going to require discipline. You're not going to get to level 10 in the first 20 minutes of play. You need to get in there. You need to need to practice, you need to sweat, you need to have willpower, you need to have courage. All the stuff that, you know, we take for granted when we talk about somebody who wants to go to, you know, a karate class or a jiu-jitsu class or something like that. It's just martial arts. And there's no way to achieve any kind of skill in that world without making a commitment. And what we find nowadays is that it's quite difficult to get people to commit to stuff. It has to be fun first and foremost. And so if we talk about the traditional art taught in the traditional way, it's dry, it's really slow, it's really painful. There's not much scope for sort of reinterpreting it in your own sort of way, because it's bound in sort of a cultural identity as well. And we don't have any of those hassles, because this is like, you know, this is like a nursery for doing all of that, where you can come to terms with what the content actually is and just have a laugh with it. Just, you know, make your own costume. You want to come Sith, come Sith. You want to come as, you know, if you want to be Iron Man with a yellow lightsaber, you can do that. That's just not a problem. We don't mind.
I would love to see that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a big thing about Pokemons at the moment, so I'm looking forward to see. Yeah. Pokemon with lightsabers. That could be
That could be quite funny, actually.
Yeah.
So, out of interest, I mean, sort of going back some of the history. I mean, how long's the actual academy been founded for?
Well, me and Nick have been. Nick Musson is my colleague. He's like my big brother, and you know, we set this up in 2015 when we came back to sparring again after sort of, you know, years off, where we both went away. You know, had a couple of kids. Became dads.
Life happened, basically.
Yeah, and then we just got back together again, because I said to him, look, you know, you come down and have a giggle. We've got some lightsabers. And he's like, what you want me to drive down to London? And he hates the city. He drives through, you know, he's cutting his way through the traffic.
Quite literally.
Yeah, makes his way into the studio, and he's like, what? Hang on a second, you brought me all the way down here for some toys, and we just had a laugh, man. We just fought with them for a couple of hours, and he was like, oh my God, this is amazing. We could actually teach our kids and not have to worry about them ending up in hospital, because these things are so much safer. But the truth is that we were doing this 20 years ago with steel. And
yikes.
Yeah, and that was kind of the philosophy, was that you train with steel without armor. And you have to learn to pay attention. You have to learn to be present, to be conscious, to be mindful of what you're doing. Because if you're not, you're going to either end up dead or you're going to hurt someone.
You can end up in a bad way.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, some of the friends and family that I've met through this process have saved my life, and vice versa. Not by anything else, but just by recognizing when I've made a mistake, for example, and not accidentally killing me when I've stepped into the line of cut, right? And the only reason they were able to do that was because, you know, they had skill, they had control over what they were doing, and they were present. They weren't just sort of eyes closed, butt clenched, swing, and just pray that it works, right? When that happens, it's just a matter of time before someone's going to get hurt. And you know, the whole point in martial arts is we're trying to turn you from a gambler into a player. All right, we want you to pick your shots.
I like that. Yes. I think you should trademark that. I like that. Do you know what? I think that's a really interesting point, because I guess for anyone who hasn't ever maybe experienced a martial art, or has anyone held a sword, I guess the initial reaction is, well, the biggest sword and the more aggressive you are will end up in the winner. But clearly that isn't the case, especially in martial arts, where 9 times out of 10, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's usually the more educated person is the person who's the victim.
Well, so. I mean, you know, to be fair, size and aggression is a factor. It's a huge factor. And it takes a lot of training before your technique will eclipse the natural advantage that somebody has if they're twice your size.
Correct.
Right? And the sword is one of the developments that allows people to neutralize that natural disadvantage or handicap that they have for being small. And in essence, what you're looking at, yes, you still need to be assertive, I would say, and rather than using the word aggressive. Aggressive implies that the doors and the windows are closed and you're not really being sensitive to changes in the situation. Being assertive means kind of you have an intent and you're trying to complete that, but it's not done blindly. So, in as much the sword becomes an expression of your mind rather than of your muscles. The muscles become simply the medium through which the sword is moved, through. It's such a transcendent practice, right? You get in there and you look at our classes, for example, and over half the students downstairs in the studios are girls. And even in the kids class, and even a 10, 12-year-old swinging a saber who's switched on is gonna cut you down. Right? Because they've learned to use this rather than just this. And
Correct,
if you charge at them and they're ready for that, then they're just going to bait you. You're going to step into something that wasn't there, and you're rapidly going to discover that you've been impaled. And there's a 10-year-old laughing at you. So
exactly.
this is a joy. This is and these are skills that they are already. We're seeing kids try to sit there 11 plus, and they're applying the meditational techniques that they've learned to help calm themselves prior to engagement in a sort of a tournament environment, where they have to face someone and they have to pick up their weapon, take a deep breath, step in the ring and fight. And exactly the same process is applicable for, you look at the exam paper, you write your name, you open the page, you read the first exam question, and it's like, oh my God, I wasn't expecting this one, right?
Guilty.
And stop.
I was a bit like that before this podcast started, but Faisal has managed to calm me down, so we're
Get ye to class, sir.
Yes,
Get ye to class. Come and have a play. That's what it's all about. Yeah.
I think the interesting part that you just raised there was the fact that you have mixed classes. I mean, I guess there's almost a I want to use the word ignorance, but for a better term, I probably will for the moment, where you would almost seem as wielding a sword is obviously a macho thing, right? It's a masculine thing. But the thing that I saw, especially in your demonstrations, was the vast variety of cultures and backgrounds and, men and women and children. And I think that was fantastic to see, that it doesn't matter, age, size, backgrounds, whoever you are. Everybody was able to even learn the very basic demonstrations that you were putting out. And that's something that transcended within me, is that, it's not being fearful, it's having a go, as you say, and having fun. I think that's a really interesting part that you apply to what you actually teach as well.
Yeah, I mean, the syllabus is derived from sort of battlefield stuff. It's not a sport. In a sport you're going to have weight categories, gender divisions, age divisions, all that kind of stuff, because the sport is about sports are about gambling, right? Essentially, at the end of the day, you want a fair fight so nobody knows who's going to win, and that way the bookies make the maximum amount of money. Violence and battle don't work that way.
No, exactly.
The art of war says that if it's a fair fight, then you really don't want to start that fight until you've got the advantage, and also you don't have the choice of sort of picking and choosing who's going to be in that fight. You've literally got, this is the village. The bandits are coming in 6 weeks when the snow melts, and they're going to take our grain. All of you, no matter who you are, you need to stand in a line. You need to hold your spears, and you're not letting them through. Anyone sort of falters, and I'll do you myself. Right? That's the reality of sort of human history from a non-sporting perspective. So if you don't have a system that allows you to elevate any individual to the point of being functional, then it's worth nothing. It's worth nothing. You know, if you've only got 4 people who are naturally good fighters in a group of 20, and the line requires 10 people, you're all dead. Yeah,
absolutely. No, it's true. Absolutely true.
Yeah, it's that straightforward. So you've got to be able to teach everyone. And, you know, from a sporting perspective, you'd be like, well, there are the 5 best people in the class. I'm just going to focus on them. They're going to be my champions. I'm going to, you know, invest everything I can in them and hope that they stick with it. And if they do, then I'm going to win medals, right? And from a martial arts perspective, you're like, all right, this person's blind. How do I give them the tools to be able to listen to what's going on behind them? How do I give them the ability to be so sensitive in a tactile manner that they can circumnavigate their natural handicap? And you're looking to elevate people beyond their weaknesses rather than focus on their strengths and turn them into champions. You know, it's a different kettle of fish, and the benefit of that is everyone can do it, because everybody's got weaknesses. Everybody's got points that they need to address and think about. Everybody needs to look at themselves in the mirror and understand themselves a little bit better. And, you know, quite often what you're doing is looking in the mirror at the big bruise that you've got left because you weren't paying attention, right? And you're like, right, ow, next time I'm going to try this. And then you come back to it next time. And if you've forgotten what you told yourself, then you're just going to come back and there'll be 2 bruises, right? So you're like, you have to learn. You have to understand yourself. I keep making this mistake. Why do I keep making this mistake? How do I correct myself? And the answer is you need to meditate. You need to have a look at the connections between the neurons in your brain and work out how to allow that neuroplasticity to become a tool that you can use. And, you know, people think that as they get older, they stop learning. The truth of the matter is you just become more invested in what you think you know. But as soon as you let go of that, you empty the cup. And as soon as you've emptied the cup, you're back to being a child again.
Agreed.
You know, as soon as you've done that, you're in a place where all of a sudden you're going to learn. And somebody who keeps on learning is going to essentially, they'll get there. They'll get there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, talking about kind of yourself, I think would be interesting. So, I mean, you're clearly an incredibly knowledgeable individual,
and it's lucky. And it's teachers, yeah.
and it's fascinating to talk to you. How, you know, I don't even know where to start. How did you kind of, I guess the question I'm trying to get at is, where was the point where, because you come from a Tai Chi background, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you mix the Tai Chi, and then where did the kind of lightsabers kind of meet within the middle? What's kind of the marriage that happened there?
Well,
to give it a term.
I mean, it's, you know, what is Tai Chi? Tai Chi is sort of a study of yin and yang when applied in a situation where there is conflict between either 2 individuals or two bodies. And, you know, it could be 2 armies, it could be, you know, a forest meets a desert, whatever. And in as such, it's not a specific thing. It's not like, oh, you know, Tai Chi is about punching, or Tai Chi is about kicking, or Tai Chi is about wrestling or grappling, or it's about swords, or it's about anything. You know, it's a philosophy that allows you to examine the universe and to sort of observe the interaction between polarized opposites in any given sort of system. So it's not a specific thing. I mean, it is sort of as a cultural sort of phenomenon. It is this vehicle for Chinese philosophy, which is incredible and beautiful. But, you know, it's mathematical. So I couldn't really say that it belonged to any one culture in as much as, look, you know, we all use the decimal point. We don't think of it as being an Indian decimal point or a Chinese decimal point. We all use the number 0, or, you know, we don't think of it as belonging to a particular nation or tribe or geography or whatever. Once, you know, humanity has invented a concept. It's the death of the author. It belongs to everybody. And similarly, Tai Chi, what it talks about, the kinesiology and the mathematics of movement and the efficiency of technique. Once it's, the cat's out of the bag, it belongs to everybody, really, provided you do it properly. And we're trying to teach kids, and they're struggling. They're really having a hard time trying to come to terms with, look, guys, I want you to sit still, breathe for a few minutes, and then after that, we're going to learn to walk again. And they're like, wait, you want to teach us how to walk? It's like, we got here by walking, right? And you're like, no. And before we walk, we're going to learn how to breathe. And you're just like, well, what? And that's a big ask of a 6-year-old.
Absolutely, yeah.
Of an 8-year-old. But then you give them a lightsaber and you're like, right, we're going to learn how to walk and breathe with a lightsaber. Yeah. And they just like, yes, we're going to do just that. That's it. When do we start, right? And that's it. That's how it began. It was just like, I needed something as a focus for the kids in class, to help them get over their own hyperactivity, to be able to give them a lens through which they could filter their minds and just focus themselves, and it worked beautifully. And then very rapidly it became clear that there was an opportunity. So from my particular perspective, Tai Chi becomes irrelevant if you don't practice it in the authentic manner. It's not a dance. It's not just aerobics. It has a martial lineage, and it has, you have to you pressure test yourself. You have to explore the meanings of these movements in sort of maybe not quite so cooperative an environment. And you can't do that with swords, realistically, because people are going to end up in hospital. People are going to end up dead. And even if you downgrade from steel to wood, it's still, a good hit is going to put you out of action. If it doesn't break bones or puncture a lung, you're still going to get concussion. And that's too high a price. But then, on the other hand, if we don't do it, then the forms that have been preserved so carefully over the centuries are just going to degenerate into dance. If nobody understands, it's like, imagine you've got an alphabet, but nobody speaks that language anymore. So we practice the alphabet every day, perfect calligraphy, but we can't even write our own names. It's like, what's the point? Why have our ancestors struggled so hard to preserve this information for us and to pass it down? And the answer is, well, I guess we better find a way to fight. Because if we don't explore and find out exactly how this stuff works, this time next generation, it's gone. And it will never, we can't recover it. Once it's gone forever. It's extinct. The only way to recreate it would be to start from first principles, and it's going to take centuries. So what do? We have to find a way to fight. And then the lightsabers come along, and they're not steel and they're not wood. They're polycarbonate, right? And polycarbonate bends and it weighs nothing. And because it doesn't weigh anything, it means there's no momentum. So, and the kinetic energy is reduced massively because they flex as well. So the flex absorbs a certain amount of the impact. The fact that they don't weigh very much means that the momentum on impact is very low. So you're not going to, the chances of whiplash or concussion comes right down. And with the reduction in kinetic energy, the chance of broken bones and serious sort of internal hemorrhaging comes right down, and all the rest of it. And you're just like, I can do it.
Exactly.
We can fight with this. I mean, there are compromises, right? It's a tube, it's round as opposed to a flat blade.
Sure.
So, when moving at full speed, it doesn't function in the manner as that a sword. A sword is like an aerofoil. And as you're moving, the subtlest movement of the wrist is going to change the angle of the cut slightly. You don't get that with the tube. What else don't you get? We can't thrust. We can't use thrusts because they don't flex. The polycarbonate blades don't flex on the thrust at all. And, any good swordsman will tell you, good swords person will tell you that without thrust, you've only got half of the vocabulary, but it's a small price to pay.
Sure.
It's a small price. But if we want to really explore the thrust, no problem. Look, we'll just go fencing. We'll do that for, a week, a month, a year, a lifetime, whatever. But if you want to explore the cutting art, then you need a safe way to do it. And, Kendo sort of sets up a particular example, but it's a very narrow slice of the pie. It doesn't use a very expanded vocabulary. And the main issue I've got with Kendo is it's not very interesting to watch unless you are a Kendoko, unless you are somebody who's already invested in that art form, and somebody who understands exactly what the nuance of it is. And this is why these arts are so niche, is because they're opaque to a casual audience or a casual spectator. They just look at it, people doing stuff. It needs to be obvious. And so what the lightsaber, the LED saber, allows us to do is it makes it epic. It makes it legendary. You've got this great big glowing cuts coming through the sky, and you're just like, anybody can see what's going on. Provided, of course, we don't have a really bizarre set of rules that just, which is a problem with many systems that we've seen, is the rules are impenetrable, unfathomable, unless, of course, you're heavily invested. And that again means that you don't have a mass participation product, you don't have spectator-friendly events, and quite frankly that means no sponsorship, and that means no revenue, and that means no future. So if we want people to get up, pick up a saber, go in the garden, do 1,000 cuts and come back in hench with lower blood pressure, better heart conditioning, and a stupid ass grin on their face, right? Yeah, if you want that. And the best antidepressant I've personally come across in my life is meditation and exercise, and particularly combat with somebody who loves you. Yeah, that is... It breaks the ice. It just reminds you it just reminds you, it's all right. Even in the midst of conflict, there can still be camaraderie. There can still be care for each other. And that is exemplified when not only are you trying to beat each other up, but you're also trying to make sure that you don't hurt each other. That's again, so our combat form is semi-contact. We're not full contact. We don't wear full armor and all the rest of it. It's semi-contact. It's about checkmating each other. I got you. Yeah, I got you. I got you. You look back at me and like, yeah, man, that was clever, right? And vice versa. That's what we want. We want to see. It's like the coolest game of hide and seek ever, right? But you're not actually hiding your body.
Sure.
You're hiding your thoughts, right? You think I'm going to do this, but I'm not, right? And I think you're going to do that, but you're not, right? And it's like, who's going to read the other person first? Who's going to make the jump to connect to the heart of their opponent and read it? And that's just something, people need a way to get involved in that, to understand it, and it brings joy.
No,
what more do you want? I mean, you can get it through football, you can get it through badminton, you can get it through, classic case in point, you can get it playing in a band, where one person's doing this thing and one person's doing that thing, and somehow the gestalt sound that is created where you lose yourself to that's a beautiful moment. And you can get that between two opponents sparring with swords or fists or whatever, where they create something greater than either of them. But
No, totally. And I mean, if you guys, and there's a few of you in chat at the moment, if you are interested, the links to everything to do with Silver Sabres is posted in the chat. So if you do want to attend any of the lessons that Faisal does, then please feel free to go on there, and feel free to follow all the social media links as well. So I mean, one of the things that we spoke about this briefly before we went online. So I mean, you guys are obviously based in the UK, and I'm assuming everything was founded in the UK.
Yeah, we're based in the UK, but we do have instructors. You know, we have got people who are teaching our system in Paris already.
Interesting.
Yeah, the Sports Sabre League operates out of Paris, and they are, you know, France has a different geek culture to the UK. The UK is very reticent in many regards. People are loath to come out of the closet and sort of with their, you know, Spock ears on or whatever. And I mean, to be fair, like we fight in costume and the French don't. They hate that.
Okay.
They want to do it. They want to do it in like spandex and whatever. And you're just like, really? You know, you've got a lightsaber. And they're like, no. Yeah. You know, it's like, and they're like, you know, we don't want costume. It's a trap. It's a trap. Don't wear costume. Right? Yeah, it's too nerdy, they say. And I'm like, you're fighting with a lightsaber.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
So, you know, it doesn't get any more nerdy than that. You might
How hilarious.
Embrace your, you know, just give up. Admit what you are, right? Hi, I'm a nerd and I like fighting with lightsabers. Can I have a robe, please?
Yeah. Right? Maybe that's the move. Maybe what you need to do is take robes down and sell them to the French.
No, man. No. First, let's just train like nutters and kick their asses, and then once we kick their asses, then we tell them we kicked them because we were wearing robes. Yes. Then they might. Then we might.
I like that. That's a good marketing strategy. I like that a lot. So maybe what you need to do is get some robes with like French tricolores on the background, so that you're kind of dealing with both, right? So it's branded but not, you know. I mean, that's interesting that it's slowly becoming international. I mean, is there any other countries that have kind of shown interest so far?
Bro, there's people all over the world doing this. We're not the first by a long way. Ludo Sports started in 2006, 2008, something like that. They've been going for over a decade. There's a few different academies out in the States. There's the Sabre Legion, there's the Terra Prime Light Armory, there are the Light Speed Sabre League. In France, you've got the ASL, the FFE. This is like the formal French Federation for Fencing have endorsed a particular format for LED Sabre Combat, which is... Yeah, it is interesting. It's very limited, though. We're not entirely confident with what they've created yet, because it excludes us, for example, because we fight with two hands, and their rules basically make it almost impossible for us to be competitive. It's more like Can de combat is like cane fighting, which is a very traditional French art form. They have really embraced that, and their version of LED Sabre Combat is very similar to that. So there's that, and in Asia we've got the Sabre Authority, who have absolutely divine engagements. You watch them fighting and they're fantastic. I've had the privilege of fighting one of their champs, just sparring and playing with him last year when he came to visit London. And you know, he was good. He was good.
Did you beat him? That's the question.
Sai, I salute you. Yeah. Did I beat him? We weren't counting the score.
You tease that question.
Look. This is it. When you meet, the competitors know that competition is bollocks, right? Yeah. Because, you know, it's just a question of who woke up on the day. I've got a bad back today because I was up playing Conan Exiles until 4 a.m, right? and therefore I haven't got a chance against somebody who's as good as me, but like, you know, got an early night. It's that simple. So, you know, when you talk about who won the cup or who scored the thing, all you need to know is like, can I be casual with this person, or do I need to bring my A game? That's it. If you have to bring your A game, you shut up and you show the respect that they deserve, whether you win or you lose.
It's not that you can compare it, but I often have this problem. Not that you can compare it, but sometimes when you're playing games, and I think there's a few people in chat who can compare this, where someone will go, "Oh yeah, I'm really good at Street Fighter 2," and you go, "Right," and then you have one round against, and you go, "Right. Crack, right, here we go. All right, it's game on now. Now you've done it. Now you've done it." So,
that's what I'm talking about. You see, so, you know, people who fight for the crown or fight for the trophy, they really miss the point. We fight for the dialogue. We fight for the exchange. We fight for the opportunity to see somebody's soul. And that's what happens when you meet someone in the ring. You're not fighting the saber. You're not fighting their body. It's an extension of this. So what you see is their nature. And training is very much about, some people try to mold you into this or into that. And my teacher never asked me to be a mini version of himself. And his teacher never asked him to do that. They never had any titles or ranks. They never wore a uniform. It was always a question of giving you the tools and teaching you how to use them so that you could carve your own. You create yourself. You don't do it according to this or that. And when you train, that's what you're doing, is you're trying to reveal what's always been there, and trying to connect to it and own it and give it the freedom to blossom. And that's why we do this, because when people start to touch on that and they start to get involved in that process, man, that is something to watch. Someone who never believed in themselves suddenly realize that they can do it. They are the heroes that they've worshipped their entire lives. And the hardest part of training is getting off the couch and turning up.
Consistency.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
just if you've got the discipline to basically, you get in and you're like, right, class is in an hour. All right, I've got time to sit down, watch one episode of this, have something to eat, and then the next thing you're like, I'm not going.
Yeah.
Right? So what's discipline? Discipline is you walk in, you look at the telly, you look at the couch, you look at the fridge, you drop your bag, you pick up your kit bag, you just turn around and you get the hell straight back out. You don't even look at that couch twice, right?
Great.
You just go. Get to class, and then when you get home, guess what you've earned the right to do? Sit on that couch.
Exactly. No,
Eat that
totally
donut,
agree.
right? Put your feet up and know that you did well. And that's...
No, so I think that's really nice, and I think the nice thing that I saw with the demonstration that I saw was, especially the children, almost there was obviously the excitement that the kids had, but after the first I would say 15-20 seconds, you suddenly saw this change in them, which was almost like, as you said, a focus on what they were trying to achieve. And it's amazing how just within a short space of time, just how they changed. And it was a fascinating thing to witness. And I guess that's testament to the people within your academy and the demonstrators as well. And obviously that's the teachings that you guys do. And it was a really beautiful scene to see the work and obviously the effort that you guys put in can instantly be transferred into someone that quickly. I was genuinely starstruck and sort of had to take a step back and go, this is yeah, because the thing is like, I mean, I've been educated and stuff like that, and sometimes without the right teacher you can't achieve, you'll just never be able to connect. But when you have the right teacher teaching you the correct thing in the correct way, it just clicks, and I could see that straight away, and it was breathtaking to witness. And I think that's testament to the teaching that you've clearly passed on to the rest of your students as well.
Well, I mean, Nick and myself, we only have one honest way to teach, and that is to teach as if you're going to pass it on, right? There isn't a sort of diluted level or an easy layer. You can't select the difficulty. We literally, we teach you so that if I got hit by a bus tomorrow and that was me gone, that what was given to me to preserve is passed on, right? So initially we had, you know, the program we've got for instructors, for example, if people are already experienced in coaching and they know how to, you know, they've got some movement skills or whatever, you can train quickly. You can train in a couple of days to have a syllabus that you can deliver in schools. That's fine. If you've got no martial or movement skills, you know, if you're not physically literate in the same way, then you're going to have to get involved in a much more long-term sort of, you attend class constantly. So you're not getting trained in an intense period of time, but gradually over months and years.
Sure.
And what we're seeing is that regardless of the level of skill, basically, the people that we can really see developing and understanding are the people who've done the long-term training. And a lot of, well, all of the instructors that you see at Comic-Con are simply students that have trained for long enough to be able to pass on the level 1 information in that environment accurately and correctly. So they're almost instructors accidentally. Right? They were just there to play. They were just there to have fun. They were just there to improve themselves. And all of a sudden, they found themselves asking, "Look, can we help out? Do you need a hand? Can we assist?" I'm like, I would love that. That would be amazing. And then very rapidly, sort of like within a year and a half of us kicking off, me and Nick stopped having to do the teaching at the Comic-Cons ourselves. And instead what we did, we stepped back. We let the apprentices take the classes, and we teach our apprentices how to teach, because it's a baptism by fire. You know, you're teaching hundreds of kids each day, and there's enough class happening that everybody there gets to have a go at teaching, whether they want to or not.
Sure, no, agreed.
Yeah, and then you've got us there supervising, and it becomes a really important part of our assessment of somebody's readiness to take their own class. So, you know, we only teach to that one level. We always teach as if we were expecting you to be a custodian, to be a vessel for that knowledge. And as a consequence, that's why when those kids step up and they pick up the sabres, and as soon as the instructor starts talking to them, they are immediately challenged. Right, they're immediately challenged, and you've got to remember this. This is true not just for kids. This is true for adults as well. You can give them something that they've wanted all their life. Right, here's your lightsaber. Zoom, zoom, zoom. 10 swings later, you're like.
That's an impressive noise, by the way. You've been working on that, haven't you?
Zoom, zoom, zoom. Right. So, but the thing is, you'll get bored. You know, your third class, you're just like, well, we did zoom, zoom, zoom last week, right? So it's boring. I want to do something else now. Okay, we go-karting, right? And
go-karts and lightsabers. Oh,
yeah, it's Boudica style, right?
Yeah,
so your lightsabers on the wheel. Right?
That would be amazing.
Don't tempt me.
If anyone in chat wants to set that up, we'll get Faz involved and we'll bring that on board. Right, anyway. Anyway, back to normality.
Where were we? But yeah, go.
But yeah, I mean, one thing I wanted to ask you, and I think you touched on it earlier, is obviously you're associated with the correct me if I'm wrong, the fencing committee. Is that correct?
Yeah, we worked with British Fencing. Right. I can't remember when they released their statement. I think it was 2016, and we've been, you know, trying to get our work out into schools and stuff like that, because the program we've got, because it's semi-contact, because it's mindfulness based, because it's mass participation, it's not just about, you know, big hairy blokes in armor whacking each other with plastic swords.
Sure.
Which is, you know, it's a niche thing. It's you know, we've been trying to get it out in schools, but the trouble is in the UK there's just no funding, there's just no money. We've had austerity for, you know, 10 years or whatever. It was the wrong time to have a great idea to start a business, trust me. And the number of parents we meet who are desperate to send their kids, but they simply cannot afford to. And we can't afford to teach for free. So it's like, well, there has to be some funding somewhere that we can tap into to make this available to people of limited means.
There we go, everyone. If you're watching this on demand, make sure you tag your MP in this.
Please. anything. Get it going, because we've got an epidemic of basically, you know, exercise issues, and we need people to be physically literate before they leave school, so that they don't develop the kind of chronic illnesses that 20 years of sitting at a desk is going to do. So, you know, British fencing was one means of us doing that, and also the British Council for Chinese Martial Arts, the BCCMA, who are actually our sort of parent national governing body. They're the ones who insure us, and they're the ones who've given us the link to Sport England, through which, you know, we can sort of talk about developing this stuff. So as soon as we realised that's where we want to go with this, and we want instructors to be able to go to schools up and around the country, and you know, since 2015, when we started writing the syllabus, we've been testing it, and we've taught thousands of kids since that time using the syllabus that we've developed, and it's been astounding. So now we're in a position where we've got a tried and tested product, we've got the data, we know it works, we've got the feedback from the parents and the participants and the clients, people like MCM. You know, they've been incredible. They've really put their faith in us. They just let us get on with it, knowing that we're going to make them look good. And that's an honor. And it all feeds back and tells us that we're ready. Absolutely. That we're, you know, now is the time for us to find 100, 1,000 instructors around the world and get out there and do it. We've got the protective equipment, we've got the tournament rules, we've got the syllabus. And we design our own sabres now. Ooh. Yeah, so it's taken us a couple of years working with various sabersmiths until eventually, you know, we learned enough about the process, you know, how they're manufactured, what you can do, what you can't do. In the last 6 months, we've been polishing a design from perfection back so that it was practical as well, because what we had designed was unbuildable. and so we're waiting for JQ Sabres now. Hopefully in the next month or two we should have our first run of our beautiful Excelsior is the name of the new blade, the new hilt.
There you go, you heard it first. You heard it first, everyone.
It is. This is a reveal, really. Nobody knows this is coming. But the Silver Sabres Excelsior, also known as the SS Excelsior. You're not a Trekkie, are you?
No, I am. Well, I dabble with Trek. Let's give it a
right. Okay,
that's why I did jump up and down like that. But
yes, you should have been jumping up and down.
Okay, let's redo it.
Right?
There we go. Yeah.
Okay. Right, there you go. Right, so that's coming out soon, and it's available. It will be available for players from other schools, but they'll have to pay a premium because it's reserved for us first, right? So I know they're doing a run of 50 or so of them, and we've already bought half of them, but there will be some for sale, and that's you see. So we're doing it. We've got our own sabres. We make our own armor. Most of the students, you know, when we do tournament stuff, you don't necessarily have to wear costume and stuff.
Sure.
But for display fights, for all the stuff that we do at Comic-Cons and stuff, you have to have a costume. You can't turn up in a t-shirt and jeans, pick up a lightsaber and expect anybody to take you, you know, seriously. It's like when the person you're teaching has made the effort to make like something out of cardboard boxes and gaffer tape, then you should at least make that much effort yourself, right? And all of them make their own costumes. It's incredible, right? So there's real art behind all of this as well. And then we've got our own photographers and videographers, and it's great. It's great. I didn't know so much talent existed in the cosplay world. I had no idea that the cosplay world even existed until I started teaching lightsabers, right? And then they were like, "Why aren't you going to Comic-Con?" I'm like, what's that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So here's a really interesting question for you, and I wrote this down earlier, and I didn't tell you about it. So, by having the backing of fencing and the Olympics coming in 2020, probably not this round, but can you ever see your combat system ever being an Olympic sport?
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason it can't be. But in order for the Olympic Committee to take the proposal seriously, we need tens of thousands of participants across all nations and across all continents. And I would say we're 20 years away from that.
Okay, interesting. I mean,
So,
one of the reasons why I asked that is that it was quite interesting because there was some murmurings about, obviously Japan are hosting it this year, and home of Nintendo, home of Sony, a lot of big gaming companies, and Sega as well. And they were thinking about having video games as part of the Olympics with the rise of esports and things like that. However, and this did make me laugh, they said that they didn't want to include esports because it's too violent. And I was like, so getting kicked in the face is not violent. Getting punched in the face is not violent. Fencing is not violent. And I was like, this is pixels we're talking about, and not real humans. And
well, to be fair, right? The graphics on some games have got so good.
Agreed.
That if you're watching someone pressing X, it is actually a snuff flick, right? Yes. let's.
I think I've got my quote from the podcast.
Yeah.
Brilliant. There we go. But no, you're absolutely right. And I think the interesting part is that there was a couple of companies who got on board. So I think Electronic Arts tried to get on board with FIFA because their international global World Cup that they do is huge. And obviously, football being a global sport, it kind of makes sense. So they were the first ones to pitch it to the Olympic Committee, and they just threw it out, and that really shocked me. And I know they've included football, soccer as an Olympic sport now, but I was genuinely quite shocked that with the rise of games and stuff that they thought about it and then threw it out.
Yeah, no, they are threatened by it. They're absolutely threatened by it. Of course they are, because participation in traditional sports is dropping because people can stay at home and play on the PlayStation. And, you have to admit, and you'll note that I never say Xbox, right? And Nintendo can do one too, right?
I'll hold my collection. Don't look.
Yeah. See, I know which side my toast is buttered on, right? So I mean, that they are threatened by all of this business, and rightly so, right? If people don't participate in the real thing, if it does become just unique to, if everything goes online, right? If everybody's playing, if your Champions League football is a couple of people in different rooms around the world wearing VR headsets or running on the spot, it's not the same.
No, and I agree. I mean, I was watching, what was it? It was drone racing in Saudi Arabia. And don't get me wrong, like I have this same experience with the Formula One because I went and saw it live, and watching it on TV is somehow more enjoyable. But I'll come back to that.
Yep.
And it was the same thing with this drone racing. So like they cut back and you get this beautiful backdrop, and you're seeing all these drones and they're zooming around, all these twists and all that. And then you cut back to the guys and they're just sat there like. And it was the most boring thing ever. But it was like, can we go back to the drones? Because that was the interesting part.
That was the interesting thing, yeah.
But no, I agree. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, there are certain games that have tried to take sword fighting elements into it. I think a game called For Honor tried to bring in some elements recently where kind of like the lines of striking and defending have been brought in.
I've heard about it. I haven't played it.
I mean, based on the lesson that I've had, it's obviously tried to bring in some parts of kind of your teachings that I kind of was introduced to. But it's interesting to see that games are slowly trying to bring in real life teachings into it. But obviously that it's not the same as doing it as real life. You can't be as precise. You can't necessarily read someone's position or what they're going to do next. Whereas with humans, we obviously give off a multiple amount of different emotions, whether it be eyes or physical and things like that, or even verbal. So it's funny to see that kind of sword fighting element is slowly starting to be, or elements of the real life are slowly being brought over.
There are certain things that translate really well, right? So your observational skills, seeing tiny changes, almost, trying to spot glitches before an action is executed and the next sequence for the 3D model begins, right? You want to be triggering your defenses of seeing the beginnings of something. So, there is that need to be present in the moment. You do have to be mindful if you're playing Street Fighter. You do need, if you're playing StarCraft, you need to have good micro, right? So there is a certain amount of physical literacy involved. Like, for example, I'm a keyboard and mouse player.
Likewise.
Right? And I can't be bothered with PCs anymore because I just do not have the time to defrag and devirus every time I turn on my PC. I just turn on the PlayStation and then bang, there you go. I can do 10 minutes and turn it off. And I didn't spend 10 minutes trying to work out why my joystick isn't being recognized, right? So and it's like, but the consequence of that is I have to use a DualShock controller and it's not as good because I just, it's like I aimed and the cursor just, no, in the middle, please. Whoops, no, whoops, right, whoop, bang.
And that's a fascinating thing. And I can't remember, was it the Xbox recently introduced keyboard and mouse. It was able
and
to
everybody complained we're cheating.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, right? I mean, going back generations and stuff. I mean, when you look at older consoles, as you said, it was literally a plug and play experience, and I think. Not to deviate away too much from the Silver Sabres, but having that plug and play experience was great. And as you said, you get friends over, you plug it in and off you go. But with PCs, I think they've become easier than they were. But you still need that initial. But you still need that initial setup to kind of get it into a smooth running. It's that knowledge that probably most people wouldn't have. I mean, obviously setting up what I've done here is a lot of work, but once it's set up, it's relatively done. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
That's the equivalent of knowing how to tune a car or sharpen a sword,
exactly.
Or tune a guitar or something, right? So it's just knowing your equipment, and the console side of things takes that. But I mean, the main thing is if we go back to the actual experience of playing the game, regardless of the medium, the format, the platform, whatever. The critical difference is that until the physical body is required to articulate through the correct postures, you're not learning physical literacy. You're not really understanding how and what you are, right? So essentially for a lot of these esports situations, you could be a brain in a jar with an input and an output.
It's true.
Right? And you'd probably be better off because you wouldn't need to go to the toilet in the middle of a match because right? And it's like, that's great. I mean, I've often said that jobs that don't require physical movement, like desk jobs and stuff, should be first refusal to people who don't have any other choice. Yeah, so it's like if you are wheelchair bound, you should get first choice on desk jobs. And similarly, esports in the Paralympics, right, it's inexcusable not to have them.
No, I think that's a very good shout, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, these people can't necessarily, compete on that level. But they can compete on a completely even footing if it's just, controller or,
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the charities that I supported a couple of months ago, I did a couple of charity streams, the charity called Special Effect, and they make essentially custom designed equipment to work with modern control pads. So it could be deconstructing an Xbox to have, larger connectors, or it could even be one that's voice controlled. It could be eye tracking and stuff like that. And there's one video that I was playing, and it was a guy who was pretty much bound to a wheelchair. He had minimal amounts of movement, but he was playing like a racing game, and he said his happiest moment was beating or coming first in an online race. And you imagine most people probably had no idea that this guy was obviously physically disabled, and yet has absolutely destroyed everyone who's physically able. So if there's point in case for probably having that in the Olympics, that's probably one right there.
Yeah, because that person excelled, didn't they? That was apex humanity. That was
Correct.
Peak human, right? It couldn't have been done better, regardless.
No, absolutely.
Right. So that is something we should be celebrating.
No, absolutely.
Right? We my job would be to sort of help them to reconnect with whatever they have in terms of physical ability, so that they can actually, stick you with the pointy bit if it came to it, right? Your job might be to encourage them to actually find any means of expression that allows them to recognize the brilliance that they have, right? And that's basically it. What we're talking about is empowerment. What we're talking about is inclusivity. And this is what cosplay and gaming is so special. And there are toxic elements within it. There always are, because, it's inevitable that when something comes into being that some people think that they own it. And, like we said right at the beginning, it's like, look, you're using Arabic numerals. It doesn't mean that you're suddenly, promoting Arabic culture or something, or that you're not allowed to because you're not an Arab or whatever. And it's just, I guess I'll come to you for my accounts.
Yeah, there we go.
Because you're allowed to use numbers.
No, I'm not doing that. I'm rubbish with maths, so no, don't do that.
But this is it. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about people who are so desperate for an identity that the only way to achieve it is by association. And what that means is that they then want to dominate whatever it is that they want to be associated. And you see this in martial arts as well. You see people, they talk about, this martial art versus that martial art, and I'm one of these people, so therefore I hate everybody else, and all that nonsense.
Very true.
And it's just tribalism. It's just tribalism. And you see that in cosplay, and you see that in gaming, and it is basically a pre-global anachronism of human society. It doesn't belong anymore in the 21st century.
Correct.
And, culturally speaking, for myself, the way that I was raised, tribalism is forbidden. When we look out on the street, in Finsbury Park here, there's 140 languages spoken on the street outside. It's like, I'm not going to turn around and tell anybody what they have to say. Just try and let me Google what you're saying. It's fine. I don't mind any language. Off you go. Just try and make sense, whatever language you're speaking, and that'll do. Yeah. So
that's the one thing that I think is really, I guess, empowering and interesting to see with the work that you do, is that there is no verbal language. It's all physical, right?
Yeah.
And you can clearly see there's almost a two-way conversation going on within the actions that you do. And that's that. Honestly, if you guys really haven't seen what they've done, please go and see the videos and all the social medias, because you'll really get an understanding of the amazing work they do. But the experience that I saw of people having a verbal conversation, and the fact that a lot of the work that you do isn't scripted, right? You're kind of, and that's another thing that people forget, is that the work that these guys do, the demonstrations, aren't pre-scripted. It's literally two guys having it, or two ladies, or a guy and a girl, having this conversation through battle, and it is amazing to see. And really, the work you do is fantastic. It really is beautiful to watch. It really is beautiful to watch.
Well, believe me, I sit there watching them doing, I watch them train, and I'm on them like a rash. Yeah, it's like, what are you doing? This, that, blah, 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 blah. But when they do their stuff, it's like a proud daddy moment.
I was going to say, it must be incredibly, I guess to a degree, emotional, and a sense of pride as well.
It is. I mean, and what's even more remarkable is that we have some people who've clicked and they've taken it on board for what it is, and to listen to them teaching, to listen and hear them using language, and to see them expressing themselves. And this is something that took me years and years and years to come to terms with and to become comfortable with. And they're picking it up so much faster than we did. And that means we must be doing something right. Yeah. No. And watching them in tournament, you got combat, right? Tournament. Combat is much broader. You can do whatever you like. There are no rules. As soon as you put rules on it and can't count points, it's tournament. But it's competitive. And that, seeing them in that environment, having the confidence to go out and put the hurt on, that's beautiful. And then you get display. And display fighting, fight performances are completely different. They're not scripted. We never choreograph. It's a principal policy of ours that we don't do choreography, because it's not fair on the actors and actresses and stunt people who've literally invested decades of their life perfecting choreographic skills.
Sure.
We will never be able to do that unless we go and do that course, right? So let them do it. But they don't do what we do.
Yeah.
Right? What we do is fight, right? So all you do with fight performance is you switch your headset, and instead of seeing your opponent with the mask on and thinking, right, you're going down, right? You see your friend with their costume on, and you turn around and you're like, right, I have something for you. This is a gift. and then they'll take that gift and they'll wrap it up and put a bow on it and give it back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're just like, right, oh wow, wasn't expecting that, but how about this? And then the next thing you know, and that's the dialogue. It emerges, and it's happening so fast that you don't really have time to think about it. So what you see is the reflexes that exist behind the mind, how they're kicking, and it's a beautiful opportunity to check what the technology is doing inside that person. That's display fighting, that's fight performance. So what have we got? And then there's teaching as well. So those three things are what I look at and assess when I look at the students. How are they performing? How are they competing? How are they passing it on? And they've done me really proud. They've done us really proud.
Well, I can absolutely testify for that. I mean, my first experience of visually seeing it was EGX Birmingham a couple of years ago, last year.
Right.
And I mean, you know, again, it's like most things. You see the videos, you see photos, and you go, "Oh yeah, that's cool." It's only till you actually experience the thing yourself and take part, you get it. It's the only time you'll get it. And I mean, as beautiful as the videos and everything is, when you see everything taking place in front of you, it's a completely different experience. And again, I think that's testament to the great work that you do, and all your students and your trainers as well. So a very good job to you guys. You do a fantastic job. And I think the one takeaway moment that I had was there was a young boy in a wheelchair, and I kind of sat there and went, oh, okay, how are you going to deal with this? And I can't remember if it was yourself or one of your other tutors came over, and I watched how you reviewed kind of his situation, and yet the joy that you managed to put on that kid's face. I mean, it was such a beautiful moment to witness. And again, it just shows that, you know, from any creed, any colour, any background, any disability, if you're fully abled, to be able to put that much enjoyment in, well, I guess for something that we would take for granted to be able to move, but just to be able to, you know, put a lightsaber in someone's hand and give them that movement and give them that enjoyment of even just being able to, you know, contact against the other lightsaber. I mean, it was just a fantastic moment, and I honestly believe that the work you guys do is first class, and I really hope that things really take off for you. I want to see 20 years lightsaber fighting in the Olympics. I want it.
20 years if we do it by ourselves. If people get involved, we might get there in 10, but it's, you know.
There we go, people. A challenge for you. Share this video and tag in the Olympic Committee and your MP to get funding. There's your chance to change the world right now. So, and I think on that moment, I think we will probably end it.
Sweet, it's been fun.
I will just repost that link in the chat. So as I said, there are. Oh, let me do it once more. I don't know what's going on today. My technology has failed me today. It was supposed to be automatically posting things, but there we go.
Did you wind it up?
No, I didn't wind it up. The hamster's a bit worn out, unfortunately. But yeah. So I mean, there are links in the chat. So there is a link there to the official website and all of the social medias. So please make sure you go and follow all those and go and check out the website. You can learn a little bit more about Faisal as well, and all of the other amazing people who are part of Silver Sabres as well. So, but yeah, it has been great. So thank you very much for your time, Faisal. Stay on the line. I will talk to you after this. But for everyone else who has decided to join this, or if you're watching this on demand, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this. So from me, MeanMachineDean, I'm signing off. Have a great day and take care.